All right, let's get started. So this is the fourth week of international webinar on advancing remote sensing application for ocean sustainability. This event is co-hosted by Burpa University and IOC-WESTPAC together with the Department of Coastal and Marine Resources. And of course, we have two speakers and we switch moderator each week. This week, our moderator is Dr. Patama Singhara. Let me briefly introduce Dr. Patama. She is an assistant professor at Department of Marine Science, Faculty of Science, Chulalongkorn University. Her expertise areas also involved with ocean remote sensing, ocean modeling, and climate variability. So I will pass the floor to Dr. Patama. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Tashanat, for your introduction. And welcome everyone again to this seminar. And today we have very interesting two topics on the application of remote sensing. The first one is about the system of mapping, monitoring, and modeling of water quality in the Manila Bay in the Philippines. And the second topic is about the circulation in the Gulf of Thailand inferred from satellite telemetry. So each speaker will have 30 minutes presentations, and after we finish the second presentation, then we will have about Q&A session for about 20 minutes. Okay, so let's start with our first speaker is Dr. Ariel Blanco. Dr. Blanco is a professor at the University of the Philippines, Department of Geodetic Engineering and Training Center for Applied Geodesy and Photogrammetry. He is also the Director of Space Information Infrastructure Bureau, Philippine Space Agency. His research activity span very wide range of application, including water quality monitoring, mapping plastic pollution, integrated assessment of blue carbon system, and other application on GNSS. But today he will be sharing with us on the topic of monitoring and assessment of Manila Bay water quality from space. So Dr. Ariel, please.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So thank you very much for inviting me to share our work in the Manila Bay. So I will be sharing my screen now. And put it on full screen. Once again, good morning. So I'm happy to be here and to explain briefly the work that we have been doing in Manila Bay as part of a project that was funded by our Department of Science and Technology. As mentioned by our moderator, I'm currently seconded to the Philippine Space Agency as Director of the Space Information Infrastructure Bureau. Our bureau is mainly in charge of the downstream applications of space data information. But I'm actually really from the University of the Philippines, Silliman, as a professor of geodetic engineering. So this is the outline of my presentation. So I will briefly talk about the program that we have completed basically in the Manila Bay, the R&D program called I'm for Manila Bay program, and specifically on the project which I led, which is the Project Mappable. Later we'll know what these acronyms mean, and we'll see some images of Manila Bay. But the focus of my presentation will examine the total suspended matter derived or estimated from Sentinel-3 using C2RCC. We have developed we have utilized and also developed our own, say, machine learning based models. But in this presentation, I will limit it to TSM because my main interest is to really show, for example, the different levels of TSM and the spatial and temporal variation of total suspended matter, but also to examine them using the composition analysis and correlate them with what is happening or what has happened in the watershed in terms of, say, vegetation, cover, and some other things. Finally, of course, we will have some brief conclusions based on the presented data and analysis. So this shows the extent of the Manila Bay as well as its watershed. So Manila Bay has a coastline of around 190 kilometers. You might have heard many activities going on, for example, in this small part of the bay, which is Rojas Boulevard. We have the Dolomite Beach, for example, but that was a very small segment compared to the entire coastline of 190 kilometers. The Bay Area covers around 1,100 square kilometers, and as the watershed area, as you can see here, bounded by the yellow polygon, covers around 17,000 square kilometers. So the Manila Bay is actually linked to this, to our biggest lakes. This is the Laguna de Bai, or Laguna Lake as we more popularly call it. And then this is linked to the Manila Bay through the Pasig River. So during summer, there's also intrusion of saline water going into this lake. So in this particular watershed, we have around 178 local government units and then 17 principal river systems. So I mentioned in the introduction or in the outline the project that we have made and also the program. The program is called the IOC-WESTPAC Manila Bay program. So this is an R&D program funded by the Department of Science and Technology in support of the government's effort in ensuring that the water quality in Manila Bay is actually improving. So there's a Supreme Court ruling saying that all government agencies should basically work together in order to attain and improve or improving water quality. The project consists of looking at the watershed, examining the watershed, the vegetation patterns, and also doing some watershed modeling and analysis. And on the Bay Area and also the other water bodies, including Laguna Lake and Pasig River, there's a group doing the hydrodynamic and material transport modeling and analysis. There are also projects looking at, for example, the dredge materials coming from the river connecting, draining towards Manila Bay and Laguna Lake. There's also a project looking at solid waste management, and also a project on wastewater, waterborne pathogens, and endocrine disrupting chemicals. But my project, so I headed this program, but in particular, I headed the Mappable project, which is focusing on the remote sensing and geographical or geospatial analysis of the bay, the lake, as well as the other lake systems, and also the watershed of the Manila Bay. So objective, of course, of that project is to examine the spatial temporal variation of key environmental variables, or specifically the water quality variables that we will be looking at, and see whether there are changes, for example, in the watershed that are actually affecting or are translating into effects on the water quality in the Manila Bay in particular. Prior to this project, we undertook a project focused on the Laguna Bay Lake, and also utilizing various satellite images and models in order to monitor chlorophyll and TSS and turbidity and other water quality parameters, including color dissolved organic matter. So the project that I will be presenting this morning is called the Development of Integrated Mapping, Monitoring, and Analytical Network System for Manila Bay and linked environments. This means that we are utilizing not only satellite images, but also citizen science and also in situ sensors deployed, and also, of course, in situ measurements, lab analysis of water samples, and so on, in tandem or in collaboration with the various government agencies. The objective of our project is to develop and deploy an integrated system for mapping and monitoring the water quality of Manila Bay and lake systems, including major tributary rivers, using geospatial technologies, remote sensing, and GIS in particular, and citizen science. Now, so this presentation will not include much about citizen science, but we develop an application which is now being used by a number of groups in order to empower citizens and enable them to report environmental changes or concerns or issues or even improvements that they are seeing in their particular area. So the project dealt with these different water quality concerns, including, of course, the chlorophyll, color dissolved organic matter, oil spill and oil leak turbidity, SPM or suspended particulate matter. We also map macroplastics in Manila Bay and the Pasig River, and even some concerns such as the water hyacinths, which are proliferating in Pasig River and even Laguna Lake, and of course they are say discharged or exported towards Manila Bay. We also examined those marine debris as well as the ships and structures that are present in Manila Bay during the time of the acquisition. So in this presentation, I will focus primarily on TSM and partly on chlorophyll A, and discuss what are the patterns that we have seen for Manila Bay now. And these are inputs also to another project which is utilizing, for example, DELT 3D and other hydrodynamic and water quality modeling to model the circulation and water quality and even simulate potentially what can happen in the future if you have different activities, including reclamation in the bay. So to give you an idea of the Manila Bay and its water quality, at least visually, so these are planet scope images stitched together into a planet story, and showing that, for example, this area which you have Pasig River, the biggest river, contributing lots of sediments towards the sediments and nutrients towards or into the Manila Bay. No? And occasionally, of course, you will have some discharges of high turbidity and nutrients coming from this area, which is Pasig River, which connects this lake to the bay. And this is basically draining this area on the Metro Manila part. So closer look at the Pampanga River. This is Sentinel-2 with a 10-meter resolution, showing that this area is highly turbid, brought about by due to the sediments and, of course, the algal particles that are present. And there's an extensive area here covered with fish ponds. Now, of course, they are formerly mangroves. So in this particular project, we utilized a range of models, including the C2RCC model. So this is the monthly composite of the total suspended matter from Sentinel-3, because we know that the resolution is 300 meters, but the temporal frequency is quite high. And even so, with those temporal resolution of a day or two, we are also seeing that sometimes it's quite difficult to complete the coverage of an area because of the cloud cover. So that's why we resorted our analysis to monthly composites and looking at different years from 2017 to 2020. That's the time because the project ended around 2021 early. And we can see that there are predominantly the high turbid areas are located in this northern part, and then due to circulation patterns, it will spread. So I'm not an expert in circulation, but these images were actually utilized by the hydrodynamic group in order to validate or even actually just qualitatively compare the images with their simulation model, and then they can also infer the circulation based on these images of turbidity or total suspended matter derived from Sentinel-2 images. So later we'll see more analysis of this data set, and then comparing it with what is happening or what has happened in the watershed area. So this illustrates, or this flow diagram illustrates the process flow for estimating TSM chlorophyll layers from Sentinel-3 and MODIS. So we also process MODIS to evaluate or to examine the earlier years, their TSM chlorophyll distribution. Okay. So primarily, this is quite straightforward, but the end goal is actually to produce these monthly composites, which you have seen in the previous slides. So, as mentioned, for case 2 waters, we are utilizing C2RCC. We have developed also some machine learning based models based on our own effort, but in this case, again, C2RCC is shown here or described in this particular slide. So it uses a large database of radiative transfer simulations inverted by neural network as basic technology. So its neural-based network is performing specific tasks of special neural networks trained to cover extreme ranges of scattering and absorption. And we utilized a SNAP to implement or to run this model for Sentinel-3, Sentinel-2, and Lancet-2, and of course, MODIS. So you also use this model, C2RCC, for Laguna Lake, because that lake is actually, of course, case to water, and it's quite turbid as well, with a second disk of around just maybe 1.2 meter. So from Sentinel-3 and C2RCC, so again, these are the derived total suspended matter and chlorophyll A concentration, shown here only for the year 2020. And what are the observations that we have made based on analysis of, for example, of, say, monthly chlorophyll A for 2020? So the highest was detected, that's 25 microgram per cubic meter. Should be cubic meter. And then we have monthly TSM distribution for 2020, with the highest detected at 178 grams per cubic meter. So there are high concentration in the nearshore areas of the bay. So particularly, of course, in northern part, where you have large discharges coming from the biggest river in the area, on also the large watershed. So these are directly receiving nutrients and sediments from that watershed. And consistently highest in the northeast area. So this is the largest river draining the watershed, mostly agricultural lands. So we call that watershed the Pampanga River basin. So it's largely agricultural, but it's being transformed now into more and more built-up areas, I suppose. And then east and southeast area, or the sides, receives runoff from high and medium density built-up area. So in particular, we are looking at these areas coming, being discharged through the Pasig River. And also from the Cavite area, where you have lots of conversion from agricultural uses to built-up areas as well. So this general pattern was observed to be consistent among the years from 2017 to 2020. And then if you look at the seasonality, so for example, for December to May, which is considered dry in the Philippines, so you have more concentration in the nearshore areas. And during the wet season, so you have greater dispersion of this chlorophyll A and total suspended matter due to wind and current action and so on. So, but our question is basically, of course, not only to monitor to determine the spatial temporal variation of, say, TSM in Manila Bay, but also to explore other things, no? Using a geospatial approach. So this complements what the other group is doing, more on the, say, SWOT modeling of the watershed, as well as hydrodynamic water quality simulation of Manila Bay and Laguna Lake Pasig River included. So primarily sediment discharges are, of course, from the tributary rivers, as we have seen from the images, but these sediment discharges are affected by the changing land cover, seasonality, and of course, you have long-term changes that are being put in place. The topography or the slope characteristics, the soil characteristics, rainfall intensity, and of course, cover management practices being implemented, particularly in many agricultural areas in the watershed. So as part of the project, we also utilize Landsat and other images to map in more detail the Manila Bay watershed land use land cover. So this is based on the analysis of all the images present in the particular epoch in order to complete the coverage. For example, this covers 2015 to 2016, and then we are looking at different classifications here. We have, for example, separated urban areas into mixed urban and also dense urban fabrics, which is related to our goal, of course, to get more information about the distribution of built-up areas, which can be related later on to, say, nutrient dynamics. Okay, so this is for the epoch 2015 to 2016, 2017 to 2018, and then you have 2019 to 2020, where we have seen, say, reduction of forest from 16.36 to 12.9%. And then there's an increase in the shrubland from 14 to 17.86%. And other changes, including, for example, changes in the annual crop, as well as the mangrove area, which is basically quite small, this particular region. So we know also that sediment discharge may be affected not only by the land cover, but also the land cover fragmentation. So this is my old study. So utilizing hydrologic models, and we investigated the combination of land cover percentages as well as land cover fragmentation characteristics, and we have found out that in many simulations or cases, then the land cover fragmentations plays a bigger, or acts as a bigger or stronger predictor for the sediment discharge. So the TSM layers that were shown earlier were analyzed using the spatiotemporal hotspot analysis in ArcGIS. So this basically implements the space-time cube analysis in the ArcGIS, so combining or practically you're doing hotspot analysis not only spatially but also temporally to determine whether hotspots are new or consecutive or intensifying, persistent, and those kind of different patterns. So for the TSM hotspots in Manila Bay, you can see that this area is basically the persistent hotspots, meaning that they are almost always high in total suspended matter. So a hotspot is defined here as an area of high total suspended matter, 45 to 170 milligram per liter. But there are other areas where you have here sporadic hotspots. You also have oscillating hotspots in certain areas. It is also worth noting, for example, that this Pasig River, the river mouth, you have predominantly sporadic hotspots, where you have large discharges of only during rainy season, and maybe less turbid water are discharged during, say, dry season. In other places, even in the dry season, because of the irrigation and other activities, you still have some high turbidity. Hence the persistent hotspot in that particular area. So for the particular analysis in the Manila Bay, we look at how each of these, rivers, which drain into Manila Bay, are actually affecting the TSM variations and trends in the Manila Bay. So we examine some stations near the mouth and going way further from the river mouths. And look at, for example, the patterns of the turbidity or TSM based on this. So here we are seeing in this map the stations for the Pampanga River. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4 with these red dots, and these are the patterns of data quality. Water quality we are seeing here. So based on this, we are seeing some, say, if we fit a trend line, linear trend line, then we will have some increase, in particularly in Pampanga 1 and Pampanga 2, and maybe a decrease in some areas. But there's, of course, the time series of this data should be decomposed in order to improve the analysis. And before doing that, we also look at the watershed again. But for this particular correlative analysis, we examined only the vegetation cover in the form of NDVI, the rainfall pattern, using gridded rainfall data sets, as well as the sub-bareness index, utilizing high-resolution satellite image in that regard. So based on this, if we consider these 4 stations, so the PRB1, 2, 3, and 4, PRB1 being closest to the river mouth of Pampanga River. So these are the correlation that we are seeing. It's quite actually not strong, for example, even for the NDVI or even for the bear and the rainfall mean. So we have decided to decompose the time series into trend and seasonal components. Of course, you have the random or the noise component. Based on this pattern or time series for Pampanga 1, so this is the trend line over the trend component over the months, from say 2017 to around 2020, and then you have the seasonal component which captures the rainy and dry season patterns, and then you have the random component. So we have done this for different items or parts of Manila Bay, and based on this, we are also testing for homogeneity of the time series to see if there are some discontinuity or if the time series will have to be separated or into 2 sections or more in order to proceed to the analysis. So again, the focus here is primarily just for an example, the Pampanga River Basin. And these are the trend components that we are seeing at the different stations near the river mouth and stations that are farther away. So clearly for, say, the trend for Pampanga, the station 3 and 4, you have increasing over the time. But for the first 2 stations, you have increased and then decreased, depending on, say, the particular rainfall pattern in the year, which might be affected by El Nino or the Nina and so on. But what is interesting here is that if we look at this trend for, say, station 1, we can see that it matches those that are the increase or the decrease in the bare areas, NDVI, and precipitation. In particular, the high trend turbidity or TSM is actually correlated with this area, the peak where you have high bare condition in the Pampanga River basin. So that even though that you have lower, for example, precipitation, it's still enough in order to increase or to result in a high levels of TSM in the Bay Area. So if we look at those correlation between the trend components of the TSM and the watershed base factor, we are seeing here that you have now a better or stronger correlation. So higher turbidity, of course, is positively correlated, strongly correlated with the trend in the bare percentage data. and then you have the negative. It's negatively correlated strongly with the NDVI trend. So trend-to-trend comparison is quite good. So indicating the long-term or the trend component are actually good or useful in characterizing the linkage or the connectivity between this watershed and the bay water quality. So if we look at the seasonal components, so we are seeing here that basically the rainfall and the NDVI seasonal component have correlation to the level of 0.3 to 0.4. And we can see here that the NDVI seasonal and then the Bayer seasonal is actually negatively correlated at this level, negative 0.689. If we look at the seasonal components of, say, rainfall at Bayer, so there are times where you have coincidence of, say, high rainfall events coinciding with the Bayer areas. And these are basically a source of concern, indicating that we should do more cover management practices in the watershed in order to reduce, say, water quality or TSM in the bay. With the case of the rainfall seasonal line and the NDVI seasonal, there is basically a negative correlation, but what we can see here is basically also a shift. So if you have high rainfall here based on the seasonal components, this is usually followed by a higher NDVI, which makes sense. So in conclusion, so we have presented and described this spatio-temporal distribution of TSM and also partly the chlorophyll A in this presentation, and we have captured interesting features and patterns. And then trends in the TSM is examined better using the composition analysis because we can clearly correlate the trend in the watershed and then trend in the water quality in the bay, as well as their seasonal components. And at the temporal scale, which was considered in this presentation or in the study, which is monthly. So the correlation of the trend components reveals strong influence of vegetative cover on the total suspended matter. Of course, most of this or some of this are actually known to us, but it's better that also we are seeing these patterns and patterns or the relationships between, say, watershed and its downstream waters will vary differently. Will vary across the different watersheds, depending on the characteristics of the watershed, rainfall, and so on. So we are comparing now all of those things and comparing what are the differences and the similarities across the relationship between the watershed and the water quality of the Bay Area. So that's all for my presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Blanco. And thank you for your very interesting talk. And so because of the time, I would like to propose that for the question and answer, we will move to the end of the second talk, and we will have more time to discuss. Okay, so then I would like to move on to the next speaker. Okay, so our next speaker is Dr. Arachapon Anuttariya. Dr. Arachapon is a researcher at the Institute of Marine Science, Burapha University, Thailand. She's graduated from Scripps Institute of Oceanography, University of California in San Diego in 2019. And her research topics include the investigation of boundary currents, variability in Solomon Sea, and also off the coast of Sri Lanka from seasonal to interannual time scale. And while she studied in the US, she was the recipient of NASA Earth and Space Science Fellowship. And currently, her research activities focus on the Gulf of Thailand. And today, she will be sharing with us her work on surface circulation in the Gulf of Thailand from remotely sensed observations, seasonal and interannual timescales. Please, Dr. Arashapon.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for such a lovely introduction. So my talk today will be on the surface circulation in the Gulf of Thailand from remotely sensed observations, and we will be looking at the seasonal and interannual timescale. So here in the picture, I am presenting the Gulf of Thailand. As you can see, it is pretty much bordered by Thailand, and a little bit is also adjacent to Cambodia, Vietnam, and a small part is also sit right next to Malaysia, but Malaysia is not presented in this picture. A little bit of the motivation of why I am using the remotely sensed observation to look at this area is because we are sitting right here, like with the Thailand, like enclosing it, and it is very important for the economical and like fisheries component of the country. However, we have like very limited continuous observation. As the best of my knowledge, we have 7 Thai gauge stations, which are presented in the purple triangles. And we have 8 high frequency coastal radars presented in red circles. And we have like 1 more sensor station, one that I know of, presented in orange arrow, which is right here. And so to look at the circulation over the Gulf of Thailand, I think it is a great idea to look at the observation from satellite and like all the products derived from these wonderful satellite observation. So the first thing that I am looking at is the ocean surface current analysis real time. A lot of you might be more familiar with OSCAR. So OSCAR has the resolution of 1/3 of a degree, which translates into 36 to 37 kilometers. And this will provide the surface currents over the Gulf of Thailand. I'll be using the cross-calibrated multi-platform CCMP version 2, and this one will provide surface wind with a spatial resolution of 27 to 28 kilometers over the Gulf. With this wind component, I will be computing the wind stress and the wind-driven Ekman current, as well as the wind stress curve, which are the forcing of the wind that is acting on the surface of the oceans. Then I will be using the sea surface height from the altimetry, and I will be computing the geostrophic currents. With all those wonderful data sets, I will be answering these scientific questions. As I mentioned before, that this area is very important to the economics of Thailand. We are depending on a lot of tourist industry, fisheries, and aquaculture. This area is also undergoing very large change in wind at seasonal timescale, because it is like impacted directly by the monsoon winds and the change of its direction. We have the southwest monsoon shown here on the bottom. That is present roughly from May to August. And we have the northeast monsoon that is coming from the northeast from around November to February. On top of that, we have the interannual wind that is derived from the different climate modes. As of the Gulf of Thailand over here is located right between the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean. It provides a unique opportunity of observing the influence of these 2 climate modes on the circulation at the surface. So the first climate mode is the El Nino and the La Nina, also known as the ENSO events, which is the climate mode over the Pacific Ocean. During the La Nina, we have westerly anomaly, and during the El Nino, we have easterly anomalies. Over the Indian Ocean side, we have the Indian Ocean Dipole, or IOD. During the positive phase, we have anomalously westerly winds, and during negative phase, we have anomalously easterly winds. To answer this question, I will be using 6 years of observation from 2014 to 2019. And I would like to take this opportunity to actually jump right into the conclusion. And the reason I'm doing that is because just in case this is the second talk and maybe like a lot of you don't have it anymore, to stick until the end of the talk. So just to give it away right now, in case any of you decide to leave like midway, you know the takeaway of this talk. So for the seasonal timescale, we're looking at the monsoon wind, and we found that the seasonal variability account for about 28% of the total current variability. Most of the surface circulation is geostrophic, which means it is roughly driven by the variation of the sea surface height. And the sea surface height is largely set up by wind stress curve. On interannual timescale, the study reveals that ENSO events dominate circulation variability over the Gulf of Thailand in the interior of the Gulf and along the eastern boundary. However, the Indian Ocean dipole influenced the currents along the western boundary and along the southern boundary of the observing domain, which is at 8 degrees north. So from that, let's take a look at the results in more detail. So for this study, what I decided to use is I use the technique that is called the empirical orthogonal function, or the EOF technique, to look at the dominant pattern of the surface circulation. And the reason that I have to find the dominant circulation is because, as I mentioned before, I will be looking at this circulation pattern over the course of 6 years. So over the course of 6 years, there are about more than 400 pictures of the surface circulation that look like the ones that I'm showing on the right-hand side. So of course, I cannot look at the 400 pictures like one by one. I mean, like I can, but I don't think it is optimal to do that. So what I did is I implement this EOF technique. Basically, what it does is that it will go through all the 400 plus pictures for me, and it will pick out the pattern that that happens very frequently. So the pattern that occurs frequently, it is called the EOF mode. And then along with the patterns or the EOF, it will also give me another component that is called the principal component, or the PC. And this PC will look something like the picture that is showing on the lower right corner. So it will be this time series that will show when this pattern is occurring and how intense it is occurring. But because our study is applying this EOF technique to a vector quality, which is the surface velocity, we have to reconstruct a complex number out of this vector quality by taking the zonal component of the velocity being the real part, and the meridional component of the velocity being the complex part, construct the complex number and apply this technique to the complex number field. What I will see is the EOF is stay the same. So it will be patterns, just like the one shown on the upper right. And then I will have the PC. Now, with the complex number, I'll have two components to the PC. One being the magnitude of that pattern, and it will look just like the subplot B showing here. And the other component is the phase. So here I am plotting the phase varying from -pi to pi. So it will show the rotation of the dominating pattern, or the EOF, that is occurring at that time. Okay, so here, right to the result, I apply the EOF technique to the surface circulation over the Gulf of Thailand from 2004 to 2014 to 2019. And on the upper left, this is showing the most dominant pattern, which is EOF1. And the percent of variance explained by this circulation pattern is shown here, which is 27.6%. So it says that 27.6% of the time we will see pattern that look resemble to this. On the right-hand side, the line is showing the magnitude of this pattern. So we can see that like during the southwest monsoon in 2014, for example, we see pretty high pattern that look like this. So it means that during this time, we have surface circulation that looks so much like what we are seeing right here on the left-hand side. In C, we are showing the phase and the different colors corresponding to the different seasons, the different monsoon season over the Gulf of Thailand. And we can see that we have only 0 phase and pi minus pi for the first dominating components. And below, I am showing EOF2, which is the second most dominating pattern, consisting of the flow that is very strong along the western boundary of the Gulf, as well as strong flow at the entrance. Okay, let's look into EOF1 a little bit more. Just as I mentioned before, that we have like very intense flow of this pattern occurring in the southwest monsoon season of 2014. Intense flow of this pattern is also occurring like during the southwest monsoon season of other years as well. And the phase relationship is 0. That means that we have this exact same pattern occurring during the southwest monsoon. And on the bottom, I am showing the monthly mean in June, which is the average from 2014 to 2019 of the surface current. And it's showing like pretty beautiful match of the pattern that we have this anticyclonic circulation in the interior of the Gulf of Thailand, along with southward flow that is coming along the western boundary. At the entrance, we also see this outflow. And at the same time, we also have very high intense magnitude of this circulation pattern also presented in the northeast monsoon of all the years that we are looking at. However, right now the phase relationship is about pi minus pi, which means that this pattern will show up in reverse. So I would like you to like take like every single arrows that is shown here and flip them. And so to confirm that it is happening, I am looking at the monthly mean of the surface circulation during 2014 and 2019, and it is presented here on the lower right corner. And as you can see, it is capturing this pretty well, that we have like cyclonic circulation in the interior of the Gulf, and we have the northward flow along the western boundary, as well as the inflow that is coming into the Gulf of Thailand. So from this, it is pretty clear that we have this pattern that is capturing the seasonal variability of the circulation over the Gulf of Thailand, because we see that like it has like this pattern showing up like during the southwest monsoon and the fall monsoon transition, and the pattern pretty much reversed during the northeast monsoon and the spring monsoon transition. So this pattern captured about 28% of the total current variability. So that is our first finding. With this current variability, we see the cyclonic and anticyclonic pattern that dominate the interior of the Gulf of Thailand as well. So next, I would like to look at the second EOF, which is present on the lower left corner. Again, if we look at the PC altogether on the right-hand side, we will see high intensity of this pattern happening around in spring monsoon transition, which is the area highlighted in green, with the phase relationship of about pi/2. So with the positive rotation being the clockwise, we rotate this pattern shown on the lower left corner pi over 2 degree clockwise, and we will get this beautiful northward flow that is going along the western boundary of the Gulf of Thailand. And this one, it is particularly interesting because the flow itself is quite strong. And if we can recall from last slide, it is even stronger than what we've seen during these monsoon seasons. Next, during the fall monsoon transition, the same thing also happened, that we see high intensity of this EOF2 pattern during the fall. And the phase relationship is about negative pi over 2, which means that it will rotate this pattern, this EOF2 pattern, southward. And we will get southward flow along this western boundary. From this monthly mean picture, we don't see very wide of the southward flow current. However, it is there. Also, I would like to get your attention to this flow at the entrance as well, because we do see it, that like when we have the northward flow, we have the inflow from the entrance, and when we have the southward flow, we have the outflow at the entrance as well. So this brings me to the second finding, that we have like 14% of the variance that is described by strong currents along the western boundary, and it is likely associated with the South China Sea inflow and outflow. Next part is to look at the geostrophic components of the flow. Right here, I am presenting the total velocity, or the velocity that we will see in the ocean is plotted in black arrows. Together with that, I am showing the geostrophic component, which is plotted in red. And many of you might not be very familiar with the geostrophic current. And just to put it in like the simplest term, we have the total velocity, which includes everything. And then from this total velocity, we can break it down into two components, one being the geostrophic part and the other being the ageostrophic part. The geostrophic part is, roughly speaking, the flow that is setting up by the fact that we have water, distributed more over some location and less over some location. So this will drive flow from the location with more water to location with less water, and it will drive geostrophic flow. And the ageostrophic flow is just the rest of the flow. So this is showing the monthly surface velocity for the total and geostrophic flow, which is plotted in red. And hopefully you'll see what I see, that the two vector fields look very, very similar. So what I go ahead and doing is to compute the correlation between the two vector fields. And so what I found is that the correlation is quite high. If we look over the entire basin, we see that the correlation coefficient is about 0.7. At the interior, we have a little higher correlation coefficient of 0.71, not significant, not significantly higher, but it is significant at the 95% confidence interval. And along the western boundary, we have the correlation coefficient of 0.67. So from this, we can say that most of the geostrophic flow is roughly driven by, most of the flow over the Gulf of Thailand is mostly geostrophic, and is driven by the sea surface height variability. So the next question is, what is setting up the variability in the sea surface height, right? So I would like to borrow this figure from publication by Zhong et al. In 2022 that explain the idea very well. So most of the people, when we talk about the sea surface height variability, we talk about the wind stress curl, because the curl of the wind stress that is sitting right on top of the water does influence how that water column look like. If we have the negative wind stress curl, which is shown in red, it will drive the water into the center of that curl, and it will give like a little bit higher sea surface height at that area. However, if we have like a positive wind stress curl showing in the blue arrow right here, it will drive the water away from the center of that curl, and it will depress the sea surface height a little bit. So that is exactly what I do, is that I am trying to look at the correlation between the sea surface height and the wind stress curl that is sitting right above it. And so this picture on the upper right is showing the sea surface height variance. And the fact that I'm showing this here is because I don't want to look at the sea surface height variability everywhere over the Gulf, because the dynamic of the wind stress curl over sea surface height can be different over different part of the Gulf itself. So what I did is that I look at the variance in the sea surface height, and I look at the area with high variability in the sea surface height. And I picked two regions, one being to the south of the Gulf of Thailand, located at this green star, and the other along the western boundary, located at this purple star. So for the region in the upper Gulf of Thailand to the south of the upper Gulf, we see that the wind stress curl at this triangle has the highest correlation to the sea surface height at the star, which means that the local wind stress curl drive this variability in the sea surface height at this region. And here on the left, I am plotting the sea surface height anomaly at the star location shown in black, and wind stress curl, negative of that wind stress curl at the triangle location plotted in green. The correlation coefficient is minus negative 0.8. Now, when we look at the western boundary location, which is located on the bottom, I found that the wind stress curl that is actually correlated with this sea surface height variability located so far to the north of the actual location. So we see that the wind stress curl to the south of the upper Gulf actually dominates the sea surface height variability at the western boundary here. And the correlation is really, really high of the correlation coefficient of negative 0.89. And that is because the correlation does not only capture the seasonal variation of the sea surface height, but also the intra-seasonal variability as well. And you can see this little wiggle match up really well. So from this, I can conclude that the sea surface height is set up by the wind stress curl. Next, I would like to talk about the year-to-year variability. First, let's look at the effect of the Indian Ocean dipole event. So for the positive phase of the Indian Ocean dipole, we have the westward anomaly, and for the negative phase, we have the eastward anomaly. The picture right here is showing the correlation between the surface velocity and the Indian Ocean dipole index, which is the index that tell you when do we have like the Indian Ocean dipole and when do we not. The color is showing the intensity of the correlation, and the lines are showing the phase of the correlation, with the solid line showing positive phase and negative line being the negative phase, the dashed line being the negative phase. The thick line is showing the phase 0. So what we are having right here is that we have high correlation with the IOD event along the western boundary and along the southern boundary of the observing domain. So this is the next finding, that we have high influence of IOD event over the circulation over the Gulf of Thailand, especially along the western boundary and along the southern boundary of the domain. And with this, it means that during the positive phase, we have the flow that is more northward and normal, And during negative phase, we have a flow that is more southward than normal. And I looked through like the possible forcing, and I found that this is essentially due to the change in the zonal wind components that is associated to the IOD events. And the map right here is showing the correlation between the zonal wind and the IOD index. And we found that during the positive event, because we are having like westerly anomaly, that westerly anomaly is actually driving the northward flow. And during a negative phase, we have the easterly anomaly that drives the flow southward. Next is the effect of the ENSO events. And during the ENSO events, we have westward flow. During La Nina, we have eastward anomaly, flow anomaly during the El Nino events. And again, this map is showing the complex correlation, and we can see quite well that the high influence of ENSO events is actually occurring along the eastern boundary and the interior of the Gulf of Thailand, which is our next finding. And to get your attention to this two bands with very high correlation, I am putting like black box around it. With the box in the middle, we see that the flow is going more westward than normal during El Nino event, and is going eastward than normal in the box to the south during El Nino events. And this is essentially producing the cyclonic circulation. During La Nina events, the flow goes the other way, and it is producing anticyclonic circulation. So I would like to see what it is actually happen during the ENSO event. And during the study period, we have one big ENSO event, which has happened in 2015, shown here in the middle bottom. So in December of 2015, we see this pattern quite well, that we have this cyclonic circulation that has happened right where the box is, and the northward flank is about at 10.5 degree north, and the southward flank is about at 8.5. And when we compare this picture to the mean, to the monthly mean, which is percent on the left-hand side, we see that this cyclonic eddy actually was there during the normal year as well, but this cyclonic eddy is actually to the north of what we are observing in 2015. So it is this cyclonic circulation that is sitting between 9 to 12 degree north. So we see that this percent of the El Nino event does shift the location of this cyclonic eddy to the south. And this pattern is associated with the change in the sea surface height associated with the ENSO events. So now it brings me to the summary, which is everything I covered. Seasonal variability accounts for 28% of the total current. Flow is geostrophic. Water level is set up by the wind stress curl. At interannual time scale, we have the IOD that modify the flow along the western boundary and along the southern boundary of the observing domain as well. And during the ENSO, modify the sea surface height in the interior. And so this work is accepted to Ocean Science, and the preprint is actually available right now, but the manuscript is in the process of publishing. So hopefully it will come out soon. Okay, that's all for my time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alashapon, for your very nice presentation. And I already see the hands from the audience. So we have the Q&A session for the two speakers. Okay. Anybody want to ask the question? Please raise your hand. Please Kentaro Ando.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Ken Ando from Jiangsu, Japan. I have a question to last speakers, Arachapon. Yeah, so you show very good, studies. And my question is that you show the wind stress curve anomalies during the ENSO event in the Gulf of Thai, right? And I'm wondering why the El Nino events causes such that shift of the wind stress curve to the southward. Why the ENSO event caused such southward shift of wind curve stress? Yeah, my question is.
Okay, so that is to do with the last few slides, right? Okay, I think I need to pull up the slide to let's see, to better answer that question. So let's see. Am I sharing the screen right now?
Yeah, I think during El Nino events, we do have the negative atmospheric pressure over the maritime continent. Maybe such kind of negative, large-scale negative pressure will affect to such kind of southward shift of wind stress curve.
Yeah. To answer that question, I cannot I just forget how to share my screen, so we'll do it this way. So I do find that it's actually correlate to the percent in the dip or the depressed or the shoaling of the sea surface height at the same area. So I am hypothesizing that it has to do with like the sea surface height depression or rising at that location to create the cyclonic or anti-cyclonic circulation around it. The thing that set up that sea surface height is actually not clear as of what I am looking at right now, because I have been looking at the wind stress curve as well, and the wind stress curve actually does not quite show the same pattern. One of my theory is being that it might have to do with the coastally trapped Kelvin wave that make the signal of the sea surface height propagate northward along the eastern boundary. And the other one is similar to what you mentioned, because we have like the mountain range sitting right there to the northeast of the location. It might have to do with the wind change that like changed the rest of the bay, but not at that region. So it does produce this stir somehow that is not even over the whole area of the Gulf of Thailand, and that could cause the change in the location of the cyclonic eddy. I think you are not turning on your mic.
So you hypothesis two cases, right?
Yes.
And first, for the first cases, I'm not sure about the coastal Kelvin waves. So how these coastal Kelvin waves propagated from? Where so Kelvin wave?
Yes, that is correct. That is like if I have a bigger study domain, I hope I would like be able to answer the question. But I realized like midway that my domain doesn't go far south enough, so I don't see any like propagating pattern. But yeah, so that is why I cannot eliminate one or the other, because I just cannot see it with the data that I have right now.
Yeah, maybe for these two hypotheses, maybe it's better to look at more global, more larger scale. Then you can find out.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for the recommendation.
Any other question? Wency.
Hey, thank you, Patama. Nice to see you. Thank you very much for moderating. This is two very good, presentation. I think it's very interesting because the two studies focus on different, sub-regional area. One is the Marina Bay, another one is the Gulf of Thailand. But you see that the approach are different, I feel. I really impressed by the, integrated study has been presented by the Dr. Ariel Blanco, right? On the integrated study for the Manila Bay issues. I think, I really want to know, how, based on what kind of, motivation that kind of integrated study was, supported by the governmental agency, right? And how that project program could be sustainable. Because we know that Manila Bay has been one of very popular, heavily polluted area. Frankly speaking, due to the anthropogenic activities, I think I indeed also pay very high attention to the efforts of the researchers from the Philippines and the government agency from Philippines, in combating those kind of issues. So how this kind of, research approach, integrated research approach was very much advocated, in the Philippines. But also question to the second speaker, Dr. Achapong, right? Whether you work together with the other modeling group, to have some kind of integrated understanding about the circulation and the current situation in the Gulf of Thailand. I think the circulation it's very important, right? Those things. So I think my question is a little bit much more beyond, the contents you presented, but also try to understand how, the research approach was advocated in our developing countries, in the case of Philippines, right? Yeah, Dr. Blanco, yeah, appreciate your, right.
Just a backstory to that project or program. Basically, there was a group who lobbied, who filed basically a case against, say, several government agencies in the Supreme Court. No, so the Supreme Court ruled that okay, this agency should be able to do something in order to save Manila Bay, in order to improve water quality, in order, for example, to restore and protect ecological services of the Manila Bay. So that basically prompted or basically pushed different agencies, even including, of course, the big agency called the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, to do many programs within the watershed, improve the processing or the treatment of wastewaters going out of Manila Bay, and of course to help that agency, DNR, the Department of Science and Technology, opened, say, communication with the DNR and explored, say, what are the potential science and technology projects and programs that can be implemented or can be supported by the Department of Science and Technology in support of that move in order to, say, monitor and model and map or manage Manila Bay. So we come up at the University of the Philippines, we come up with several projects because we are coming from different sectors, from the mapping side, which is from genetic engineering. We have the modeling side from the civil engineering side. We have also people from the sciences, chemistry and biology, and even chemical engineering, for the treatment of, say, wastewater. So we proposed this to the DNR for basically some counterpart funding, and even that part has actually been a bit not so difficult, not an easy task, because, for example, one agency may be committed to support the funding, another agency may not be supportive in terms of funding, and beyond funding, for example, even after completion of, say, projects, there's also some sense on our part that okay, maybe agencies are not yet ready to adapt the systems that we have developed, to adapt the methodologies that we have developed, which should be automated, not within our school, for example, our laboratory, but through the agency, because they will be the ones to really utilize it. So those are some of the issues we are facing, but it's good to know that many agencies are actually collaborating with each other, but there's a lot of hurdles that needs to be overcome in order to really benefit from, say, science and technology interventions, as well as specifically those that are initiated by the, say, research institutions or universities and funded by our Department of Science and Technology. there's some, I think some needs to be, some discussions are needed and some agreements must be made at the higher level in order to really say that we can operationalize this type of research and R&D outputs by the universities.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, that's good. You know, can I seek some kind of advice or inspiration from the second speaker? In terms of Thailand, I also noticed a lot of study conducted, you know, in the Gulf of Thailand, whether there's some kind of integrated approach, you know, to be adopted to understand the pollution status, biodiversity conservation, or even some kind of solution, you know, to sustainable development challenges, as we always mention, right?
Thank you for the question. I do know some effort that is going into that integrated study of like monitoring the pollution and the water condition that is in the Gulf of Thailand. As you mentioned, that we have been I lost it, but as you know, that we have like quite a few of the numerical simulation that is going on in the Gulf, and the Gulf of Thailand is very heavily studied region in Thailand, like for like Thai researcher. Yes, and we do both of the independent studies, and we talk about it in like conference and this kind of thing, and we also have like the integrated system. But just to justify what it is happening, I might not be the best person to talk about this issue. As Dr. Patama has already mentioned, I am like pretty new here. I only graduated for 3 years, and I have only been working here for like 2.5 years. So I don't know that too many people, but I do know that there is an effort by many groups to try to integrate the measurements that we are collecting routinely with some sort of model to try to gauge where this water quality is going to be, and like how do we improve the water quality for the sustainability of the region.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from Thailand, you know, can share some experience, you know? Yeah, some good. Patama, I saw some get resigned, right?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I have the question to the second speaker, Alachapon, you know, because as you know that the upper Gulf of Thailand is very important. We have many issues. It's particular, it's related to the organic pollutant, you know, that has been make a lot of trouble to the ecosystem in the upper Gulf. And you mentioned in your presentation that you also mentioned about you collect the data from the HF radar, right? You are also use the data from the buoys, one buoy, right?
I am actually not collecting any data. I am like at the beginning of the presentation, I only point out that there are just this handful amount of the measurements. But in this study, I didn't use like any of the in situ measurements. I only look at the ones from the satellite.
Yeah. For me, I'm very interesting because for the pattern you show up on the first and the second EOF analysis, right? The pattern of circulation. Because of, I think if you are if you are able to use those kind of HF radar to validate your finding, I think maybe it's more, it will make it more confident, you know, on the on your study. Yeah, because otherwise, you know, it's difficult because everything is came out from the model, from the data, and from the models. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. This is something that I am 100% like agree with. And this is like a little detail that I left out from the presentation. Of course, I cannot fit like 20 pages of mother script into 30-minute talk. But yeah, I did compare the results from the remotely sent observation to the HF radar. It turns out to be quite okay, but just to just a little bit of like the caveat is that the resolution of the satellite observation is not that fine. So with the 37 kilometer resolution, we have 6 points of measurement in the whole Gulf of Thailand. That is 100 kilometer wide. And so you can interpret, like when I compare, like I can interpret the result either way, because the high frequency radar is like really having very fine spatial resolution. But once I conduct this study, I compare the results with previous study that's done in the Upper Gulf of Thailand, and they are sure enough of that to tell me that what I got from the satellite is totally garbage. So that is why, like throughout this presentation, I pretty much left out the results from the Upper Gulf of Thailand because I truly think that it is not reliable, and my study is more focusing on the everything that is to the south of about 12.5 degree north.
Any more questions?
I have one. I have some like technical question to Dr. Arashapon. People debate a lot about interannual variability on surface circulation in the Gulf of Thailand, and you already showed that second EOF is pretty consistent with the interannual variability. But the case is different phase of ENSO and IOD might synergize or sometimes cancel out each other in terms of anomalous winds. So I think it might be more than 4 cases if you might consider more details.
Right. I totally agree to that as well. There are numerous studies that show the augmented wind change in the wind pattern that happen when we have both of the climate mode happen at the same time. And to be fair, like these climate modes don't happen independently. So there are quite a bit of like the dependent factor that is going into the change in the climate mode as well. So I think it is very interesting to see how that unfolds of like when we have like both of the climate mode happen at the same time and when they influence each other, to see how that actually impacts the circulation over the Gulf of Thailand. I think it is a very interesting question that will also have to be answered in the future. Yeah.
And some more question, like both ENSO and IOD might like have phase lock, right? If you pick only phase lock in certain months, it might help.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if the audience are familiar with this, but with the ENSO and IOD, how they evolve is that like they tend to be like more intense during the end of the year. At the end of the year, so the impact will be more impactful during the fall monsoon transition, the northeast monsoon, and the spring monsoon transition. So these are the 3 seasons that we are looking at when we look at the interannual variability, and I do see that in my data set as well. Yes.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, I actually have a question for Blanco. Okay. You mentioned about looking at Barnes index. So I wonder how you do that. And the second question is about you got the total suspended matter from using the C2RCC model, right? And I wonder how accurate this algorithm is compared to other algorithm that we normally use. Thank you.
So first on the C2RCC result, we compared that actually with the field data that we collected. So we collected water samples and analyzed it particularly for TSS and chlorophyll A. And in the field, we also utilize a multi-parameter water quality sensor, as well as a submersible fluorometer. No? So I did not show the fit, for example, or the RMSE, but basically it can give an accuracy of around 85% to 90%. But of course, there are questions. For example, usually what we can see from the C2RCC is that you have very high turbidity. At the same time, you also have high chlorophyll A. No, so that is usually an area where maybe some difficulty in algorithm, or even the sensors will have also difficulty in detecting, say, chlorophyll A or phytoplankton in too much turbid water. No, so that's an area where we have to do a lot more field activities. But overall, based on our comparison, so it works for case to waters, particularly in Laguna Lake and as well as in Manila Bay. For the second question, it's more on the bareness index, if I understand correctly. So the bareness index was basically calculated as a percentage of bare areas within a particular pixel or within a particular region of interest. So it can be. I think we did not use in this case the normalized bareness index or normalized bareness index, but we compared or really look at say Sentinel or even high resolution images like Planet in order to examine the level of bareness in the different portions. No? So that's why it's not really a direct say inversion or a direct inverse relationship with the NDVI, because it's not really a normalized difference vegetation index, but different bareness index, but instead a calculation of the amount of bare in the areas as detected through higher resolution images.
Okay, thank you. We still have a couple of minutes. If anyone wants to have questions. Yes, Ando?
Yeah, sorry, this is the second time. I have question to Ariel. So can you hear me? Okay.
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, you show the kind of a correlation of NDVI and bareness and rainfall. And sorry, I might miss, I came late to your talk. So you might show the kind of correlation on the turbidity in the ocean. And show the kind of time series of NDVI, bareness, and rainfall you show in your presentation. And in the time series, if I recall correctly, you show the some kind of correlation between rainfall and NDVI, and also a kind of correlation between rainfall and bareness. And this correlation seems to be a little bit, different.
Yeah.
And, in case of a correlation between rainfall and NDVI, rainfall come first and then NDVI come late, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Could you please, if you don't mind, could you please show the slide
That's
again?
right. Okay. We'll pull up with it.
And also rainfall time series correlate also with the bareness, and the bareness, you know, maybe yes, that to be correct. Yes. So looking at this, so bareness, bareness first, and then come down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this means this sounds like first rainfall came, and then some kind of bareness, occurs. Some soil will appear on the surface, and then vegetation came up late.
Yeah. In this case,
So my comment is maybe you may be able to develop some kind of seasonal stories.
Yeah, that's right.
In association with the rainfall event.
Mm.
And then so the bareness decreased. So vegetation came up late.
Mm.
So my image, I guess that then after bareness decrease, we may have the some kind of higher turbidity in the ocean.
Mm.
So my comment is we may have some kind of stories.
Yeah, that's right.
By linking the rainfall event and water runoff and then turbidity in the oceans. Yeah, so that is just my comment.
Yeah, I think it's worth investigate.
Yeah.
So in this, for example, in this, so this is the raw, or basically this is a trend, no? The trend rather of the TSM for one station, which is closest to the Pampanga River mouth. No? And if we compare this with the time series of the normalized values of the indices, PVI bears, we can see that there are cases where you have high turbidity or high bareness, but you have decreasing rainfall during this period, relatively.
But this is a case of interannual case, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And my question is, you show the seasonal case, so the correlation to be so.
Yeah.
So
this is quite interesting, the seasonal component.
This is kind of I thought this is kind of a seasonal variability, right?
Yeah, seasonal variability, seasonal
seasonal component also do have a correlation with stability in the ocean. That is just my comment.
Yeah, thank you very much. In this figure, we can see that, for example, if you have this rainfall, what is interesting for us in this case is that there should be times where you have, we should do more work in reducing this bare area, maybe some cover management practices in order to reduce, effectively reduce turbidity by, so because we cannot control the rainfall, but we can control the amount of bare areas.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comment, suggestion.
Any more questions? Okay. If not, then before we finish our session, can I ask everyone to turn on the video for the group photo, please?
Okay.
Okay, I count 1, 2, 3. And next page, 1, 2, 3. Dr. Sachinat, okay? Okay. Okay, thank
Okay.
you everyone for joining us today, and don't forget, and thank you especially for the two presenters who share knowledge with us.
Thank
And don't forget,
you.
next week we still is the last session of the workshop. I hope everyone can join us again. And okay, thank you everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Patama.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Wincy. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.